Have you ever felt completely powerless in a relationship? Like you're emotionally enslaved to a woman who seems to hold the invisible strings to your deepest feelings? It's not just happening to you. Countless men today are experiencing this same emotional imprisonment, desperately seeking to understand why they keep falling into these same destructive patterns with women. What if I told you that Carl Jung, one of history's most profound psychological minds, warned us about this exact phenomenon decades ago? That he identified a specific female archetype that lives within you, not outside of you, that's quietly sabotaging your relationships, your emotional stability, and ultimately, your masculine identity. Today, you're about to discover the hidden archetypal force that silently drives your deepest emotional behaviors toward women. This revelation isn't just another psychological theory. It's the missing key that explains why modern men feel increasingly lost, confused, and emotionally dependent in their relationships with women. The pain you're feeling, that sense of being emotionally manipulated, that feeling of losing yourself in relationships, that pattern of being attracted to women who ultimately leave you feeling depleted, it all stems from this single psychological blind spot that Jung identified. And until you understand it, you'll remain trapped in this cycle, wondering why you keep experiencing the same emotional wounds with different women. But there's hope. By understanding this powerful female archetype that Jung warned about, you'll finally have the tools to break free from this invisible prison. You'll learn how to recognize when you're being controlled by this inner force, how to integrate it properly, and how to reclaim your emotional sovereignty as a man. To understand what's happening within you, you need to first grasp what Jung meant by the anima. The anima isn't a woman you meet in the external world. It's the unconscious feminine aspect that exists within every man's psyche. It's your emotional soul image, the feminine counterpart to your conscious masculine identity. Jung discovered that this inner feminine force shapes how you perceive, relate to, and emotionally respond to women in your life. But here's where it gets dangerous. When this anima remains unconscious and unintegrated, it doesn't just influence your behavior, it possesses it. You see, your anima develops through 4 distinct stages, each represented by a different female archetype. First is Eve, the purely biological maternal figure. When your anima is fixated at this level, you're drawn to nurturing women who make you feel safe and taken care of. You might find yourself becoming childlike around women, seeking maternal comfort rather than equal partnership. Have you ever noticed yourself becoming unusually dependent on a woman's approval, feeling anxious when she doesn't respond to your texts, needing constant reassurance of her feelings? These are all signs that your anima is stuck at this primitive stage. The second stage is Helen, named after Helen of Troy, the seductress. At this level, your anima projects romantic and sexual idealization onto women. You become enchanted by physical beauty and sexual allure, often ignoring red flags because you're captivated by the fantasy she represents. Think about those relationships where you put a woman on a pedestal despite clear signs of incompatibility. You weren't seeing the real person. You were seeing your own anima projection, your inner feminine ideal dressed in her skin. The third stage is Mary, representing spiritual devotion and virtue. Here, your anima elevates women to a realm of purity and perfection. You might find yourself attracted to women who seem above ordinary life, the spiritual seekers, the pure souls, the ones who seem untouchable. When operating from this level, you're not relating to actual women, but to your idealized image of feminine wisdom and virtue. The disappointment is inevitable when the real person fails to match your spiritual projection. The fourth and most mature stage is Sophia, representing wisdom and integrated femininity. Few men reach this level of anima development because it requires conscious integration work that most aren't even aware they need to do. The problem facing modern men is that society no longer provides the psychological frameworks to understand these inner dynamics. You're left battling an invisible force within yourself, wondering why you keep experiencing the same emotional patterns with different women. When your anima remains unconscious, it creates a psychological complex, a cluster of emotionally charged thoughts, memories, and impulses centered around this inner feminine image. This complex operates autonomously within your psyche, influencing your feelings and behaviors without your awareness. Let's make this concrete. Have you ever found yourself becoming irrationally emotional over something a woman said or did? Perhaps experiencing mood swings, irritability, or hypersensitivity that seemed out of character for you? These are moments when your unintegrated anima has taken control. Or consider this common experience. You meet a woman, and within days or even hours, you're convinced she's the one, despite barely knowing her. What's happening here? Your unconscious anima is projecting itself onto her, transforming her into the carrier of your own inner feminine image. Jung warned that when the anima remains unintegrated, men experience a psychological condition he called possession. You become possessed by your own feminine side, which then dictates your emotional responses. The great irony is that while you think you're responding to external women, you're actually reacting to your own internal feminine aspect that you've projected onto them. This explains why so many modern men feel emotionally destabilized in relationships with women. They're not actually relating to the real women in front of them. They're entangled in a complex dance with their own unacknowledged feminine nature. The unintegrated anima creates what Jung called a contaminated consciousness, where your rational thinking becomes infiltrated by emotional reactions and fantasies that seem to come from nowhere. This contamination undermines your decision-making, your emotional stability, and ultimately, your sense of masculine identity. Now we arrive at the crucial revelation, the moment of truth about how this one archetype is ruining modern men. When your anima reaches what Jung called the possessional stage, you essentially become a psychological puppet to your own feminine aspect. This is the exact warning Jung issued that so many men today have failed to heed. In this possessional state, your emotional life becomes completely volatile. You experience intense jealousy over trivial matters. You become hypersensitive to perceived rejections. You develop an unhealthy emotional dependence where your mood is entirely determined by a woman's behavior toward you. This is when you find yourself checking her social media obsessively, overthinking her every word, and experiencing emotional devastation from minor slights. You become reactive rather than responsive, emotional rather than centered, dependent rather than autonomous. Your thinking becomes clouded with fantasies and idealized images. You project qualities onto women that they don't actually possess, then feel betrayed when they fail to live up to your unconscious expectations. This creates a perpetual cycle of idealization, followed by disillusionment, a pattern that repeats with different women because the source of the problem lies within you, not them. The most dangerous aspect of this possessional state is that it makes you vulnerable to emotional manipulation. When your anima is unintegrated and projected outward, you unconsciously seek women who will carry that projection for you. And some women, consciously or unconsciously, are all too willing to step into that role and use it to influence your behavior. This creates the perfect storm of psychological dependency. You need her to embody your inner feminine, and she gains emotional power by doing so. The result is a relationship dynamic where you feel controlled yet cannot break free, because the attachment isn't just to her. It's to your own externalized feminine aspect. Look at the epidemic of modern men who have lost their sense of purpose and direction. Men who feel emotionally adrift, who struggle with unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression, who turn to addictive behaviors to numb their discomfort. Behind many of these struggles lies an unintegrated anima that has taken control of their psychological life. The truth that Jung discovered, which our culture has forgotten, is that emotional stability for men doesn't come from finding the right woman. It comes from integrating the feminine aspect that already exists within you. Until you do this inner work, you'll remain trapped in the cycle of projection, idealization, disappointment, and emotional dependency that characterizes the unintegrated anima. The pain you feel in relationships isn't primarily about what women are doing to you. It's about what you're doing to yourself by remaining unconscious of this powerful archetype that Jung warned would ruin men who failed to recognize and integrate it. Now that you've seen the truth about this powerful archetype, you stand at a crucial threshold. The path forward is clear but challenging. You must consciously integrate your anima, rather than continuing to project it onto the women in your life. This process of integration is what Jung called individuation, becoming a psychologically whole individual by bringing unconscious aspects of yourself into consciousness. It's about acknowledging that the feminine isn't something outside of you to be controlled or pursued. It's an essential part of your own psychological makeup that needs to be recognized and properly related to. The first step is awareness. Simply recognizing when your anima is being triggered or projected is powerful. When you feel those intense emotional reactions, ask yourself, is this about the actual person in front of me, or am I responding to my own inner feminine image? The second step is reclaiming your projections. This means consciously taking back the emotional power you've given to external women and recognizing those qualities as aspects of your own psyche. The idealized feminine qualities you seek in women, nurturing, intuition, emotional depth, beauty, are capacities that exist within you, waiting to be integrated. The third step is developing a healthy relationship between your conscious masculine identity and your inner feminine aspect. Jung called this maintaining the balance between logos, masculine reasoning, and eros, feminine relatedness. This balance allows you to remain emotionally connected without becoming emotionally dominated. As you integrate your anima, you'll notice profound changes in your relationships with women. You'll no longer need them to complete you or validate your emotional experience. You'll be able to see women as they truly are, not as carriers of your own projected feminine ideal. This leads to authentic connections based on reality rather than unconscious fantasy. The ultimate lesson Jung offered, the warning we've ignored to our detriment, is that psychological freedom for men doesn't come from controlling or possessing women. It comes from integrating the feminine within, from achieving psychological wholeness that doesn't depend on external validation or completion. Consider how this knowledge might transform your current relationships or your approach to future ones. Imagine being emotionally centered enough that a woman's approval no longer determines your self-worth. Imagine recognizing your own projections before they create unrealistic expectations and inevitable disappointment. This is the path of the individuated man, the man who has heeded Jung's warning and done the inner work to integrate his anima, rather than being ruined by it. What aspects of your anima have you been projecting? Which stage of anima development resonates most with your experience? Share your insights in the comments below. And let's create a conversation about this crucial psychological work that modern men need to undertake. If this revelation about Jung's warning has illuminated something in your own experience, give this video a like. Subscribe to continue this journey of psychological integration, and check out our previous videos on masculine psychology for a complete understanding of Jung's insights for men. Remember, the feminine archetype that's been ruining modern men isn't a woman out there. It's the unintegrated feminine aspect within. By making this unconscious force conscious, you reclaim your psychological sovereignty and break free from the emotional prison that has confined so many men throughout history. Your journey towards psychological wholeness begins with this single realization. The question is, are you ready to heed Jung's warning and do the inner work it demands?